You gotta have that dog. Desire. That hunger. That non-stop will to win.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, let's get going, huh? Let's go, gather up. Come on now. All right, fellas, you gotta remember your body is like day-old rice. If it ain't warmed up properly, something real bad can happen, yeah?
Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict II Athlete podcast. Hey, everybody out there, Coach Blu Robinson here. I want to thank you all so much for all that you do, for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys doing so. Hey, as always, keep your eyes on the website, addicttoathlete.org. You'll find all of our backlog podcast information about the team, how to become a certified sober recovery coach for Team Addict II Athlete. Check out all that and more on addicttoathlete.org. One final announcement. I do want to thank everyone that participated in our Project ELF efforts, being able to help fundraise and support families during the Christmas and holiday season with gifts for their children because of some hard times they may have fallen on. I want to thank everybody so much for being charitable and being able to participate, not just in the fundraising efforts, but for showing up and helping, do the labor intensive work, wrapping the presents, getting them out, finding the folks that need it. Thank you all so much for your time, your service, and your dedication to Team Addict II Athlete. Adley's got a great guest in studio today. It was awesome being able to just catch up with him briefly before we hit record. I didn't want to go too deep into his story because I'm like, you got to save some for the podcast here. But Spencer, welcome to the Addict II Athlete podcast, brother. You are an amazing athlete, amazing runner, but you've got a pretty powerful story of overcoming addiction, being able to recognize how if you hadn't have taken life by the horns, it might be a very different story right now. Spencer, welcome to the podcast, brother. Introduce yourself to Team Addict II Athlete, and let's jump into this.
Thanks, Blu. It's really an honor to be here. I'm stoked. This is a blast. This is just so fun for me. Such an honor here. So yeah, Spencer Clason. I am 7.5 years sober now. Counting the months still, counting the days. Every day is a gift. So I'll never stop that. But yeah, I would call myself an experienced but not exceptional runner. Yeah. I've done
Aren't
quite
we all
a bit,
that way though?
right? Yeah. Running is just a blast for me. That's kind of what keeps me grounded, helps me stay focused on my recovery. Yeah, and now looking kind of the last few years to what else can I do, right?
Yeah.
I love running. I love Addict Athlete and the mission of sober, active organizations, and then how can we give back? How can I take this great thing that I love, running, and this powerful journey that I've been on with my recovery and do more with it? So yeah, excited to talk about it.
Man, I'm so excited. I'm so glad that you're here. Why don't you jump in a little bit, tell us a little bit about your history, a little bit about kind of, I love when our stories, and every story starts this way, especially you probably noticed this, every story starts amazing, then has this really freaking hard part in the middle, and then a great finish. And so I always tell my athletes, my clients I work with, that if you're having a really hard time, congratulations, you're in the middle. It's not over yet, right? But I love these stories because everyone's beginnings happen in a way where life seems to be going in a certain way. And then some hard stuff starts to happen in the middle. And then we have this funny little thing called a choice. Do we choose to take life back, to do the work we need to, and to become the underdog, right? And become that hero, the champion? Or does it consume us and take us down deeper? So if you don't mind, share us a little bit about you, about your experience, and we'll get you to that point where you made some amazing decisions to create a life that you're fairly proud of right now, it sounds like, man.
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's weird to be proud of something. I think that's something that we struggle with as people in recovery in general, as humans, right? To lift ourselves up. So I appreciate that, Blu. It's something that, being a champion is something we should be proud of. And I appreciate that verbiage. So yeah, I mean, my story is probably not dissimilar to a lot of people who end up where I ended up, right? I mean, first off, I'm 29. I'm not that, old, right? I'm getting up there, but my story starts really, I was 16, high school kid growing up in Arizona, and I was a runner. I was varsity athlete. We helped take our team to second place at state championship. By no means was I the star. I was sitting there in the middle of the pack and a contributing member of the team. yeah, I mean, that was my life, right? So I was, that mornings at practice, go to school, afternoons at practice, spending time with the team, starting to think about, college and, where can I go with this? And, obviously, growing up in Arizona, growing up in the church, like, oh, I want to run for Coach Eyestone. Can I get to BYU? That was where I was at,
that was
right?
The dream,
that was the dream. And then had a pretty rude awakening where I was, summer vacation. We were big boating family in Arizona, and we were on the lake, and I, attempted a trick on a wakeboard and had a horrible traumatic brain injury, right?
Yeah.
Just crashed and knocked myself out cold in the water. Woke up in the boat, and then made the mistake, as most 16-year-olds do, of get back up on the horse. And I'm gonna do it again later that afternoon, right? Shake it off, shake off the butterflies, and just go back and did the exact same thing. And it triggered a pretty serious bout with post-concussive syndrome, right?
Oh my gosh,
so that was, that was really what kind of, if you look at the path, that was where, okay, road diverged.
That's where the
right. That's where things took a turn of, okay, this is my challenge, right? And this is the start of my challenge. To your point of things got hard, and things got really hard. And that's where really my first kind of fight with mental health and addiction started. I had a well-meaning doctor prescribe me pain medication, right? And here I was, 16. I'd lost, my running. I was in and out of the hospital, right? Fighting with, migraines and, not that they were aware of it, but severe depression, severe, suicidal thoughts and thoughts of self-harm. And, I couldn't go to school. I couldn't be awake in a light room. I'm junior in high school, and I'm, entering, colleges are reaching out finally, we're ranked. Our team was ranked in the top 25 in the country. I'm here to, we'd returned everybody that had come second at state that year. We were like, let's get it. And, I just felt like a failure. I felt like a failure. I felt like I had lost my life, right? And in a lot of ways I had.
In a lot of ways you had. It changed dramatically.
Yeah. So, that was really kind of the impetus. And, there's a long story from there to, showing up at your office on March 4th of 2017, which was that's my sober birthday. But really it was, it was a battle between this path of how do I get myself back onto that original path that happened pre-injury, pre-traumatic brain injury. And how do I, go and embrace the fact that now I have a different life that I have to live, but I can still have a great life. And so
my gosh,
that was for probably, I don't know, 7 years, 7 years. That was the struggle, right? It'd be, okay, I'm going to go to school, right? I'm going to, enroll in the program I wanted to enroll in. Okay. I couldn't run in college. Fine. But I'm still a runner. I'm still going to push myself. And then, have another setback. And, the whole time I'm hiding an addiction. I'm hiding my substance use. I'm hiding this thing that started with, a prescription at a Walgreens to all of the darkness that comes beyond that. And, and then hiding mental illness, hiding this, and I had,
jeez, man.
So that was, we don't need to go into the depths of that because I think there's a lot more to be learned from how do we get out of it 100%. Rather than what do we do while we're in it.
100%.
But I think it's an important thing to note, right? Of just,
it's a bridge.
It's a bridge. And it was a long journey of me getting up and fighting and failing and getting up and fighting and failing to get to the point where I was, I don't believe in rock bottom, but I was at a dark enough place where I said, I can't do this alone.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it hit. And so that was,
that's incredible though.
Yeah. So that's really where, my journey has gone. And then now, here I sit 7 years later. And
it's interesting though.
So,
after your accidents and whatnot, how long did it go by before you were told like, this is what you're dealing with? This is a traumatic brain injury. Because most of the times, like parents, we don't realize that stuff. We think, oh, you're okay, right? You're fine. But then they're like, dude, why are you acting like this? After months or whatever, they're like, what is going on? you don't really know. Like, how soon did you know that this is a contributing factor? Because there's that window of probably, I'll say the window of hell of like, I don't know why this is happening. Yeah. Like, how long did it take before you got that?
Yeah. I mean, it was probably a full year before I realized I'm never getting back to quote unquote normal.
Gotcha.
Right. It was a year. And I mean, it was a year of like cognitive testing and you know, the serious stuff, right? Of, okay, I got to go on like an IEP because I can't do school the same.
How crazy
anymore.
was that? After,
I mean, it was
the year before that, you were fine. Like,
yeah. I mean, honor student, doing
brother,
no issues, whatever, right? Like just, you know, dorking around in class to, you know, I need weeks to just finish a homework assignment, right? And so it was a year to realize this isn't going away.
Right.
You know, it took a few months to say, okay, this is now different.
It's a game changer, yeah.
Right. To, okay, this isn't something that's just going to, you know, okay, shake it off. This is like a hard hit at a football practice.
Yeah.
To, no, this is a serious thing. And then, you know, after a couple months of that, it took another, you know, probably 8 to 10 months to say, okay, this is
what we've got
forever. And that was really...
What was that like? Because a forever diagnosis like that, when you have plans and dreams and aspirations, can seem like a blindside sucker punch. Yeah. Like when it came down and you started to articulate, like, this isn't going away.
Yeah.
Like that's a pivotal moment, man. Like,
yeah.
How do you wrap your heart and mind around that?
I mean, I probably didn't, is the reality. I think at 17 years old, I wasn't equipped to handle that, right? I mean, I was... You know, looking back now and having gone through the healing I've gone through, I can look back and say I didn't grieve properly the loss of the life that I wanted, right? So at the time, it was just, okay, how do I just hang on,
right?
And then it was, okay, well, how, if I can't have that life that I wanted, where can I find the satisfaction and the reward?
There you go.
And that's where the substance abuse comes in, right? And that's where the substances come in and say, you know, hey, you're not going to go back to finishing races in the top 10 anymore, but this'll feel good for a little bit. This'll hit you with that dopamine kick. And
so with someone like you that has like obviously a background with the spiritual aspects of life, you know, with church and whatnot, how do you not just get so angry and pissed off at God? Like,
oh, I was.
Dude, this is not what you promised. Like, this is not what I signed up for, right? Because like that has to be a huge thing too, because you've been told, you've kind of believed in a certain path, and he's like, no, and now I'm sure you can look at it and be like, so this was the plan the entire time, huh? This is what I signed up for, because you're in that space, but we can't recognize it. It's like this. It's like trying to visualize the finish line of a marathon. Like, it's super inappropriate before you even start, right?
Absolutely.
Because so much can go wrong. But now you are like literally mile 10 into your life, and you're like, but I've got an ultra still to go. Like, you telling me I have to like go a different route? No, like, that's got to be. There's got to be so many mixed feelings about what did God do? Like, what am I doing? I can see why your addiction spiraled down out of control.
Yeah.
What was the turning point? Because I met, like March 4th, there you are, coming in to see some weird dude with a funny name. Like, what happened? Like, what got you to the point where you were sitting in the back of your mom and dad's car and they're trying to find something for you?
Yeah.
Did you tell them? Did they find out?
So I told them, yeah. So I wish I had an epiphany moment, Blu, but it wasn't that, right? I had friends who knew and would come to me and say, hey, you need help, man. Like, you need help. Like, this, we're worried about your safety, your health. Like, we want you to see your next birthday, right? I mean,
these guys, wow.
So, and I do, you know, I have to express gratitude for the friends that were aware.
It sucked then, but now you're like,
yeah.
Okay,
oh man, I was pissed. I mean, I was so mad, and you know, you're 20, 21, and you're all. I'll be open about it. You're all partying, and then you have a friend who you're partying with say, "Dude, maintain."
Like,
and I'm like, well, you can't talk to me like that. Like, look at you. Exactly. Yeah. So that was, but looking back now, it was definitely that was an eye-opening experience. And then, it was just, I kept trying to get back on that course A, right? That plan A. Yeah. And it just kept failing. I mean, it was from one thing to another. It was, a failed class, a failed relationship, horrible relationships with my roommates because, they'd be like, what's going on with
What's up
this?
with you?
Why is this kid coming back at 4 a.m.? He doesn't talk to us. He's never going to class.
Wow.
And then what really hit, and this brings back to running, is I tried to run a marathon, right? While in addiction, right? While like actively using, and trained for it, put in a really good training block. And I was actually really stoked. I was like, I'll qualify for Boston. This is going to go great.
Wow.
And last run before my taper, I'm running through a crosswalk. I get hit by a car.
You're joking.
Out here in Provo. I mean, just, like what, how could this happen to me?
Yeah.
And it was literally, like you said, God, are you kidding me right now? Like, as if I don't have enough on my plate.
Wow.
So I'm 2 weeks out from a marathon, and, ambulance is picking me off the street. It was the Mesa Marathon.
Okay.
Which was still my first marathon just a few years later.
Yeah. Holy cow.
And that, it took a year from that moment, because that was when it got the darkest, right? I said, I've done, I've gotten myself back to church. I've gotten, I have my own faith journey, which is a different topic, but, I've played the good son, right? And I've done, and I've, gritted my way
the hand you've already dealt to me
through months of just, sobriety, not even sobriety, right? I would just, clean living, I would say, but not sobriety, not recovery.
Abstinence,
abstinence, yeah. And so, that was when I just said, F it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give up. I'm going to just go.
Apparently you don't want me to succeed.
This is not happening, right? This is...
Good grief.
And so...
What injuries did you sustain?
So I tore... so I displaced 2 discs in my back, and then I tore my right oblique.
Things you kind of need if you want to be a runner.
Yeah. Or just like a human to walk, right? Like carry a backpack.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving home, which was in some ways an amazing thing, and in some ways a really hard thing, because, here I am now living with my parents. I'm 21. I'm still active in addiction. I'm going to physical therapy. I'm getting up at 5 a.m. to go to a pool with a bunch of 80-year-olds to learn how to walk again in a pool.
Gosh, brother.
And then, it helped me realize, okay, I really do need help if I want to get out of this. And it took about a year plus from that point to say, I need help. And I remember, so the last thing before I really got sober, before I, entered recovery, that led to, sitting in the car while my parents talked to you of what do we do with our son who, we thought was fine, and just going through a hard time and is actually really in need of help that we can't give to him.
Yeah.
Was, I'm at the point of, okay, do I carry on or do I give up? Right.
So you have this choice again.
I have this choice, right?
Path,
I have, and this is the path that one keeps going and one ends, right? And it's, do I want to end? Am I done? Is this how I want to end my life?
Yeah.
And I made the choice of, no, I there's got to be more to this, right? There's things I've never experienced, right? There's things I want to experience in my life. So I wrote a letter. So I knew I couldn't talk about it. I knew I couldn't just go off the hip, right? I needed to put my thoughts down
at once. Yeah.
And I was in a moment of clarity, right? Which were few at that time. And so I sat down at my computer, and it was basically like an assignment. Okay, you're writing to your mom and dad, and you're basically confessing, hey, you have no idea that I've been hiding these things from you.
Holy cow, brother.
And here's where everything is. You need to go get it, because if you ask me to go get it, I'm not coming back. Right. So here's my stashes, to get very, graphic. And you really can't let me out of your sight until we figure this out. And that's when, they called Dr. Paul, who I'd been, seeing, and said, we need more than just, therapy. He needs help. And then I ended up at Provo Canyon Behavioral, and then at Cirque Lodge. And that really kicked it off.
That's incredible.
And then it got harder, right?
Yeah.
As you know,
you
right?
think, okay, the hardest part's over.
Yeah.
Oh no. But that's the thing too, is I look at what you're going through, and you had that initial kind of trip up, and the injuries that related to the brain traumatic brain injury. And then you're like clawing your way back to get some stability, then hit by a car. It's like having like two walls in a marathon. You hit the first wall, you're like, okay, I got through the second wall. Like whenever you're running out there, listeners, you guys, when you start getting a little further into your run, there's this dreaded physical and mental barrier out there. It's called the wall, right?
Yeah.
Mine's mile 18 usually, because it happened once at St. George Marathon, and now it's like embedded in my brain. And I love the theory and the concept of the wall, where the only person that can get over, under, around, or through it is you.
Yeah.
And you kept having these roadblocks and these detours in life. And it's like, holy crap, man. But then finally pushing through it to be like, all right, I'm surrendering. I can't imagine what your parents thought when they read that letter. They're probably like, read it once, read it twice. Like, is he serious? Like, what is this? They must have felt it pretty quick, because you don't just pour your heart and soul into something like that. You're now approaching, Provo Canyon, which is its own kind of nightmare, but like super important. Cirque Lodge. Tell me a little bit about your experience, because that's when the real work begins.
Yeah. I mean, that was Cirque Lodge. First off, is an amazing program.
Yeah,
I was really truly blessed that my parents, they dove all in. They said, whatever we're doing it all, right? This was their approach. We're doing it once.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of okay.
Yeah,
I got to do this, right? And it was eye-opening, right? I mean, I had been in addiction on my own, but I'd done it, but my experience was, one of someone who hid and was alone, right? So to be around people who had been and were familiar with the things I'd been familiar with was really eye-opening.
Yeah, you're like, what is this?
I never felt like someone understood me until I sat in those rooms and was, sharing my experience, and just saw heads nodding. And I've felt that way.
Yeah.
I've coped that way. And, what I loved about the way Cirque Lodge started their treatment was, one, it's in Utah. You look at Mount Timpanogos, which is a spiritual place.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, it's a place of healing, not just because of its beauty, but because of its history. Right. I mean, that's where, the Ute tribes would bring their sick to the Cirque and heal them. I mean, that's why the Cirque exists, Cirque Lodge.
Yeah.
And I really bought into that, right? This mountain will be a part of my healing journey.
Yeah, it's bigger than you. I hear you.
And then what I loved, and what's really been kind of the theme of my recovery, is it wasn't just about sitting and talking, which is so great and so needed, right? Having people to listen and having people to talk and share your experiences, and being in places where you can be safe and say, here's what I'm dealing with. How do I get through it without, going back to substance abuse?
Absolutely.
Is great. But it was also about, how do we live life? Right? How do we live life? How do we go?
Tell me the party's over. What do we do? Yeah.
Right? How do we go be humans? Right? So we would go and we'd do ropes courses. Right? I mean, one of the biggest things, I have a terrifying fear of heights, and we went rock climbing and we did ropes courses, and I faced my fears. And so, it set this journey to now where my recovery is intertwined with running, with rock climbing, with sober active groups.
Love it.
And that was eye-opening to me.
100%.
To see, hey, I can sit and have fun at dinner with people who are going through hard things, and I don't need to just go be sad and listen to sad music and
absolutely,
and be alone in the darkness
and ponder all my sad and shortcomings. I love it, man.
So it was really eye-opening to me. And then obviously the care that you get of, here's how we're going to address this, medically and psychologically and physically and spiritually, right? And taking you
start to create
approach.
That balance, right? I mean, you start being able to I always say this with some of the athletes that struggle a little bit with, like, how do I create balance? And I'm like, well, look at the world. It's orbiting around in this universe, right? Everything's like perfect order in sheer chaos, right? But I'm like, look at the planet. I'm like, what is your North Star? What's most important to you? And they're like, okay, it's my spirituality. I'm like, okay, so in order to have a North position, North Star, you got to have something just as equally important down below, so you stay moving and not wobble out into the ethos. And some people will say those, and maybe that's their mental health, right? So I have spirituality and I have mental health, the two most important things on my world. I'm okay. But I'm like, so what's pushing this? What's moving it? Okay, so that's my physical health. Okay, so what's it moving towards? My emotional health. So you have north, south, east, west, spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. Okay. So I'm like, if you start getting too into your head and you stop doing the things that keep you spiritually connected, and all of a sudden North Pole goes to the South Pole, I'm like, it's going to screw your world up, right? So what do you got to do? You got to get back out there in nature. You got to reestablish your spirituality, because then everything's on its kilter. I love the fact that you talk about the balance of it all. When you start to start really seeing that it's more than just trying to hide the emotion or trying to suppress the feeling. It's about like, why am I thinking this? How come I'm feeling this way? What am I not doing? And what am I avoiding? I always say this to my athletes too. It's what you resist the most that causes your suffering. So if you're resisting, like getting open or honest or whatever, then you're going to suffer. So what do you got to do? You got to get open and honest, right? If you're resisting getting into recovery because you think it's easier to be an addict, well, guess what? That's causing suffering.
Yeah.
So you're leaning into all this stuff. You're having these awarenesses and whatnot. You're not alone anymore. But you let it in, man. There's so many times that people go there hoping that something will stick. How did you allow your heart to be open so wide to catch all this stuff? Because as you're sitting here telling me Cirque Lodge was amazing, I've had people say it was the hardest thing and horrible thing. It is seriously how you approach it. You saw this as an opportunity, and so you seized it. How did you open your heart? Because that means you were surrendering the relief, the pain, the frustration of not getting what you wanted in life, you thought you wanted.
Yeah.
How did you open your heart wide enough to let it in?
It's a good question, and I haven't thought much about that time, which I think is an interesting observation, right? To think back of like, it's okay, that was huge, but also like there's so much more that's happened since then. But thinking back to early recovery, that first year from Cirque Lodge to sober living to moving back in with my parents and doing the 90 and 90, right? I mean that I think really what it came down to was I knew from being a runner, anything good comes from doing something hard.
I love it.
Right? I mean,
spot on.
Growing up in Arizona as a runner, and I'll, shout out my high school.
When the crap do you go running in Arizona? I went
5 a.m.
I went running at about 5 a.m. once, and it was still like 90 degrees. I thought, you guys, this sucks. I can't do it. Yeah.
I mean, it was 5 a.m. every morning, every morning in the summer, and then before school.
I love it.
And so, my coach was great, and he was an amazing coach that, we grew up with.
But you knew there was going to be suffering out there. You're like, going to suffer, but at the end you're going to feel good. Same principles you used then.
Nothing different, right?
It,
I mean, the satisfaction that you get from knowing I've done everything I can. And I think that applies now, right?
Left it all out there.
That applies to marathon training.
Absolutely.
That applies to anything, right? Yeah. But for me, that was my real motivation was I'm not going to leave an opportunity on the table and then have a regret, right? Because I've lived the last 7 years of my life in regret.
Amazing.
Just watching opportunities pass me by. So
what you're talking to, I love the analogy of the dreaded DNF, right?
Oh, yeah.
The DNF. And you must have a very unique, I think, relationship with the DNF, because like you said, I'm going to leave everything out there so that I don't have to have that. But in life, you got a DNF. You didn't finish the boat. You didn't finish the school career you want. You didn't finish. But the coolest thing about that is you had the courage to not get a DNS. Yeah. Because on Team Addict II Athlete and in life, I'm okay if you get a DNF. I'm okay because I'm like, I get it. It sucks. We're going to find out what went wrong. We'll adjust your training. We'll see why you relapsed, right? DNF in recovery.
Absolutely.
We're going to find out the source of it. We're going to come back next year, whatever. We're going to get you stronger. But if you don't show up and you get a DNS, I have a huge problem with that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I love the fact that like, although you've had several DNFs in life circumstances, you still had enough courage to say, well, I'm starting this. I'm going. Even the goofiness of a teenage mind saying, I'm gonna go there and pull this trick again. You had a DNS. You're like, I'm not a DNF. I'm like, I'm going to conquer this.
Yeah.
So I get that mindset, man. I totally get it. So then once Cirque was over and they're like, hey, good luck, man. You're free. That's again, a whole nother chapter. That's the next phase, right? You're catching your second wind, so to speak. What was like after treatment? Because it's scary, right?
It's terrifying.
Think about it. In recovery in life, we've been engineered and geared up to try and create like security. I want job security, financial security, relationship security. I want to be secure and all this stuff. But to what point, man? Till we reach maximum security? Because maximum security sounds like prison.
And then we have nothing, right? Then we have no adversity, no challenges to overcome, no satisfaction in life.
Yeah, but we're secure, right? Yeah. You're right. I don't want that. I want freedom. I want job freedom, financial freedom. I want freedom of employment. I want all this stuff. But freedom in recovery is kind of scary. Yeah. So now those doors open and you're like, freedom, what did you do? What was the next stage of life for you?
Yeah. I mean, I would separate it into we'll separate it into three phases, right? Early recovery was about repairing what I'd broken.
Gotcha.
Right. And that was a big process. It's a process that's still ongoing today. But I mean, I was a student at BYU before I went into Cirque. BYU has a very strict code of honor. Yeah. And I was not keeping that. And I had a lot of consequences that I needed to face. So it was facing the music, right? I mean, it was facing the music of, rebuilding trust with my family, rebuilding trust with my peers, with my friends, facing the consequences of the school and the church that I was attending and okay, what does this look like, right? And that was a big piece of my recovery to know in my soul that this wasn't just about me, right? And I think that's something that, recovery is about being sober and stop using substances. Yeah. Recovery is about rebuilding relationships and finding your way to be connected again, right?
Spot on, brother. Yeah.
So for me, there was hard work around and work that still goes on today, right? With, hey, all these times that I said this, I was lying to you.
Right.
Or all these times that I said I was okay, or, you gave me birthday money or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Here's what that looked like. And how do we move forward from here? How do I, repair
Were they
trust?
ready for your level of accountability? Were they ready for it too? Were they like, holy crap? Was it relieving to them? Like,
no. I mean, the hard thing for them, Lou, was, they didn't know, right? They knew something was off, but for 7 years from, accident to March 4th, they just thought I was struggling.
Yeah.
But they had no idea that, I was here
you
using
hit it that well.
And
wow.
I think it was also a piece of it that was, wanting to just let me live my own life.
For sure.
Figure things out.
Not knowing what to do.
Knowing what to do. And so I wouldn't say I was any good at hiding it. More so just,
Gotcha.
They were willing to let me go my own path.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of, okay, this is 7 years of trauma that we're getting in months, in these very narrow windows that we're learning about, so I've had 7 years to process all this, and they've had, a couple days, a letter.
But still though, I look at that and I think, you talk about something super interesting. And although parents don't have the responsibility of like managing your life, obviously, when you're getting to the age where you're independent, they still have stewardship in it. I know how emotionally challenging that must have been for them too, to be like, holy crap, why didn't we see this?
Yeah.
And it's not blissful ignorance as much as it is like, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, because if we call you out, like, hey, pull your head out, son, like what happens to the relationship if you're not,
gone,
right? Like, yeah,
right? I mean,
absolutely. So you can't blame parents for not like drilling down in your life, but you also kind of like want them to be to a point somewhat accountable, because it's like, I'm still your son. So I can only imagine, you've had 7 years to build it up. They've had a few months. Yeah. And so they're probably like shell shocked as well. Like, holy cow, they probably feel guilt and remorse and all kinds of stuff. How in the world do you navigate that? Because that's something that not a lot of people realize or recognize or even talk about.
Yeah. I mean, it was, our relationships changed completely, because I put on the face as best as I could beforehand.
Right.
And so they had this idea of who I was. And in reality, that was not who I was. And now here I am refinding myself, right?
Yeah.
Developing this. Okay, I've picked path C, right? I've picked this other path, but who am I on that path? What does that look like? What do I want anymore, right? Okay, I'm not going to run in college. That's out the window.
So even their predisposed notion of what you're going to be, do, and have is gone too, because they're like, what is this?
So there's this, they're relearning who I am, right? As I'm going through that, and there's a lot of friction
in
there.
Real time,
and it was ugly at times. There was a lot of anxious nights and hard conversations and loud conversations, and just really kind of gritty,
real
stuff getting into it. And to their credit, they showed up family therapy sessions. They showed up at the group sessions. They took me to meetings.
Awesome.
Amazing. They really dove in. And then we're also willing to ask, my dad still to this day, asks the hard questions of, okay, have you had any cravings? How are you handling your stress? I'm
amazing.
I went back to school, ended up in grad school, progressed in life as we do. And, he knows, hey, this is still a real part of your life. We're not done. We didn't check that box and move on.
That's incredible too, brother, because a lot of parents don't do that either. They're like, oh, cross your fingers, hope he does it. That is way cool that your dad has moved into that position of still being able to be that father figure to that degree, right? Like, son, are you okay? You doing all right? Like, what do you need? Like, I think that's amazing, because we need that.
Yeah.
As much as dads kind of want to say, okay, my job is done, it's not. And for him to be able to have that kind of a relationship with you is amazing. And you allowing it because you see the value in it, even bigger.
Yeah.
That is cool. So I'm blown away then that, like, you're making all these amends. You're kind of starting to be accountable. You're doing what I call becoming an agent of recovery, where you're no longer the victim of addiction. You're like not blaming. You're starting to be accountable. You're not consuming anymore. You're not taking. You're starting to produce. As you start getting these wheels under you, when you first took on a really big challenge, like returning to school, did you have some nerves about that? Because everything happened. I mean, there's a lot of triggers over there.
Big time. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I still I was still, exhibiting a lot of behaviors. I tried to avoid going back to BYU, right? I talked to the coach at Westminster and was like, hey, you got a spot? And they're like, yeah, we got a spot. You're a decent runner. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. And then, there was a time, early recovery, and I call it early recovery because it was still exhibiting a lot of those behaviors, still right, maybe not using, working on my healing journey, becoming an agent of recovery, but it was a lot of one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back, those first couple of years, 100%. Right? And so, I ended up going back to school, and it was tough. I mean, I had to completely redo just like classes, right? Figure out, okay, so your GPA is garbage. You got to go to night school to get in, to go back. There's just that, right? And it was one of these things that, I knew it was always something I was not going to give up on, right? I wanted to go to school. It didn't matter where, but it was just one of those, this is who I am. I love learning. And I ended up, I had this idea that if I become a doctor, I'll fix myself. And that was my initial intent. I'm not a doctor. I'll tell you.
I'm like,
I'll tell you that much, Blue. Yeah. I didn't end up going to medical school.
Gotcha.
But I realized, I want to help people. I want to be engaged in this world of health. And so I ended up entering the BYU public health program, which had been something I never heard of.
Yeah.
And, ended up finding a great path, and that turned into the career that I have now. But it allowed me to realize that, these experiences that I have of struggling on my own and fighting for just life, right? The things that we fight just to get up and do every day. Other people, addiction or not addiction, have to face those things. If it's food scarcity, if it's their own mental health journey. If it's the loss of a parent, if it's the loss of a job, if it's poverty, whatever it is, right? Yeah. And so being in this kind of field and learning in that environment as I'm processing and entering kind of my journey into recovery and becoming I like the way you said it, an agent of recovery, it really married well into, the world's bigger than me. And one thing that I realized early on in recovery was the first year of recovery is so selfish.
Isn't it though?
It's so selfish. Here I am at Cirque Lodge, which is an amazing facility. And I've got people cooking for me. I've got, a great comfortable bed. I get to be in the mountains. I don't have to work. I don't have to do school. I just get to sit and talk about my feelings and learn about myself and write in my journal and listen to songs and play in the pottery wheel. Like, it's great. And it's hard. And you're undoing all this years of damage.
But
it's
good.
But it's selfish, right? Yeah. It's for me. And then, you get to, early recovery and, sober living and getting into a job again and getting back into school. But I mean, that's for me, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost in a lot of ways, for my situation at least, was pretty unfair because I'd done damage and ruined relationships. And then my family said, here you go.
Good luck.
How can we help you? Let's go. Let's do this. Let's get you in. Let's, and I betrayed trust and abused finances and you lost friends. And now I'm better now. Let's do it.
Let's pick up where I left off.
I realized, and I'm not perfect and I'll never claim to be, but I realized, I could take this and be very selfish about it and just say, okay, I'm sober now, so I'm good. Right. I'm good. Right. Let me go back to being focused on myself and just grind. And I have that tendency still. And, you talk to my wife, you talk to my family. I have that tendency. I think actually it's something you talked about balance earlier. I have that tendency with marathon training where it becomes a full-time job. I am so focused on here's the goal I'm hitting. Here's my workouts for the day. Here's the mileage I need to hit. Oh, I need to eat this. I need to sleep at this time. And well, that's not,
you're like, that's easy to me, right?
That's not what we want, right? That's not what recovery really looks like, right? Giving back, being an agent of recovery really looks like, right? That's not why I got sober. That's the same kind of stuff. It's just repackaged.
Absolutely.
So
you can see it that way. I like that.
Yeah. So that was the big shift for me, right? And that's been kind of, phase 2 and phase 3 of this recovery journey of mine has been, what's the education aspect? How do I change to trying to do something to help others, right? Focusing on
So what did you pursue? What did you go
So I pursued public health. And, I found a great program in epidemiology, which is the study of diseases. Yeah. I mean, awesome, right? Talk about like data and loving, getting into that. And then I ended up in grad school in Boston where I found a program that was a mix of healthcare management and public health.
Incredible.
And, now I do data analysis and digital health for life sciences companies, which is an interesting space to be in as someone in recovery, working with pharmacy.
Yeah.
But it's fun because I get to bring kind of that perspective of, let's talk about
that
impact.
Lived experience.
Let's talk about patients here. Let's,
this isn't just a name and number. This is a person.
And this isn't just a dollar sign, but this is a person. This is someone's experience. So,
but that's the thing though, is schools starting to kind of form, but you keep using that word wife, which means that you got
happily married.
How in the world? Because I love this, brother, and this is why I think it's super important for you out there listening who doesn't believe that it's possible in your future. Because who's going to want to hang out with damaged goods? How did you go? Because I know how I conned this gal into marrying me. I'm Marissa, but I'm so curious because this is a huge thing too. Because now you're like, you want to join me in my chaos? Come on over. Because I'm
welcome to the party.
I'm kind of an interesting fella.
Yeah.
How did that go about? Because once so many people get in situations, brother, where they either trying to hide their past and it comes out, or they don't do the work, and so it's still very much a present, and they comes out in the first couple of years. How in the world did you navigate that to find somebody that I'm assuming did what my wife did, which was, I know all the good about you, I know all the bad about you, and I'm in? Because that is a gift in and of itself.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm getting emotional already.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, first off, to the athletes listening, we're all damaged goods,
Aren't we though?
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's who we are.
Yep.
And so, don't be ashamed of that, right? I'm such a believer that if we embrace any shame, we just end up back where we were,
I
and that's
agree.
not why we're here. That's not
100%.
that's not what we're doing anymore. We're moving away from that. So, and Addict Athlete's a Utah based organization. We can speak about religion and shame, and
absolutely.
It was really hard to get back out and say, I knew, and a big reason why I wanted to get sober was at some point in my life, I want to be with a companion, with a partner, and build a life, build a family. What does that look like? And I knew if I was continuing to hide this, if I was continuing down this road, I'd ruin someone's life. I'd break their heart. And I did that. Luckily, it never got to the point where, we were committed and married, but I dated and did that.
Yeah.
And that is something that I still live with to this day.
Absolutely.
Of, having those ruined relationships because of my choices. So back to Stacy, my amazing wife, who will listen to this and chuckle and get mad at me. But
that's awesome.
I made the mistake of thinking, I'm a year to recovery, I can start dating again.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I was not ready.
Let's jump into this mistake.
Let's do this.
I love it.
And it works for us, but it was definitely not something I would recommend. So.
How did you disclose? Because, again, I think that's such an incredible thing because it is hard. And for some reason, she chose you too, brother. And that's a hard thing because, yeah, you don't want to hurt them, but you are also carrying with you this life that you've had that you're like, can I do this? How do I do this?
Yeah.
You being able to do that and hearing your story, and we're going to get to this in a second. Like, I got some ideas for you, but like you inviting her in, which means she was ready to like fight alongside you. Like she was like willing to go through the good times and the bad times. That's incredible.
Yeah. There's a naivety that comes of being young.
Mm-hmm. Oh
right?
yeah.
And I think that worked in my favor.
Gotcha.
But I had to make a choice, right? Of, I didn't disclose up front. I didn't know. And I went on a lot of dates, and it was
awkward first date conversation.
Hey, by the way,
yeah, I hear you.
Right. There's, I've got tattoos, and I have, signs of my past life. And so there's things that differentiate me already. Right. And so there's this, elephant in the room of, okay, well, Spencer's got a little bit of a history, right? Okay.
Spencer's got a bad side.
Spencer's got a bad side, which in reality is like, no,
I know.
Nope.
Nope. Yeah.
So we got dating. We went on dates, and, she met roommates and friends and family, and we were driving down Provo Canyon, and it was, okay, if I want, this girl is amazing. Right. If I want a chance at a life, even just more dates, right?
Yeah.
I got to be honest, because she's going to find out, or I'm going to, have hidden it, and it's going to be out. And so it was hey, this is my life. This is my history. Now I'm clean. I'm engaged in these amazing resources, in these amazing communities.
I've went to treatment here at the Cirque Lodge here in Provo Canyon.
Here you go.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's so funny. Yeah. How did she receive that?
It was hard. It was, okay, I got to think about it. And I know that she talked to my mom about it, which I think worked really well in my favor.
Remember that anxiety when you found out that was happening though? You're like, oh yeah, here we go.
Oh gosh, what is she going to say?
Yep. I remember I did that with my family, and I'm like, oh geez.
Yeah. And I think she went through her own journey of kind of, okay, how do I handle this?
Yeah.
And we had a lot of honest conversations about what this looks like, what it did look like, right? I was an open book, and I told her, I
love it.
Whatever you want to know,
fire away. Yeah.
I'm not hiding anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's become a really important thing in our relationship.
Absolutely.
Right. It's become, she is as involved as I am in my recovery.
Absolutely.
And so
she's part of the journey now.
She's a champion.
That is incredible.
She's great.
So when I say to you that she was willing to see all the good and there's a lot there, and all the bad and there's a lot there, and she's like, I'm in, what did that feel like to you? Like she's choosing you.
It was, one of the first times that I realized I was worthy of love.
There
right.
You go.
I mean, that is right. That's what this is
what it's about.
Right. Yep. Like we
don't
love ourselves. We feel like our family doesn't love us. We feel like nobody's going to love us if we want, a companion, a partner. And the people that loved me were because they had to.
Yeah.
This was someone who chose to, who had never met me, who saw me for who I was and said, I'm choosing you.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Not because we have a history and we're friends. We went to high school together.
We have children together. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not.
No,
It's like,
I'm choosing you. And it, I think about it now and it's like, okay, well, how can we learn from that?
Oh my gosh.
And it's, well, we got to choose to love ourselves every day, 100%. Right? We got to look at the facts and say, man, you're awesome. I would choose to be with Spencer. I would choose to be with Blu every day.
So when she says, I love you, she means it.
Yeah.
I mean, does that make sense? And that's the cool thing too, is when you're realizing that she doesn't need you, she wants to be with you. Yeah. And that is a huge thing because most of we get caught in a relationship where I need to be in this relationship. I don't like it. I need to be. Where it's a different thing when she's choosing it instead of it has to be in.
Yeah.
So my question for you then, brother, is where the freak have you been hiding? Because March 4th, 2017? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What day? Yeah. Brother, where have you been? Because holy crap, man. Like your story, I wasn't prepared for what I'm hearing. And I'm like, good grief. Like where have you been hiding, man?
I've been all over. So we moved to Boston, right? And that's where I use this term sober active, right? Because I joined the Phoenix. In Boston.
I love it.
The Phoenix. I mean, just
great program.
Amazing. And I knew about Addict II Athlete. Mm-hmm. The time wasn't right for me yet when I was here, right? I was early in recovery, back in school, and then jumping into serious relationships. Just not the time. And then got heavily involved with the Phoenix. I became a climbing instructor in their Boston gym. I was teaching climbing in, Newmarket Square and, working with the amazing team that they have, the program they have there. And that's where I realized, oh man, this recovery thing and this sober, active athlete, this works.
The marriage.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah,
movement
I mean, that's
equals healing. That's
it just, whether it's, let's go get out on a run for 3 miles, 2 miles, a walk.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go climb. I mean, my favorite thing, Blu, and
scared of heights and you became a rock climber.
A rock
That's
climber.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you, Cirque Lodge, for working on my fear.
I love it.
But it was, okay, I get to teach climbing to people who are, 48 hours sober. And, we're giving them, technical advice on here's how you tie knots, here's the words you use. And that brings confidence, right? That brings, I have control over my actions and my life. And that immediately goes back
connecting it
into your recovery. But we don't have to talk about, did you use today? Did you not use today? What are your cravings? We don't have to do that. We can. I'm here if you want me to.
I love it.
But let's just go climb. Let's go be humans.
Yeah.
And go do something hard together. And we're going to challenge
do something
that.
scary that's safe. That's what I love about it. Because then when the conversation does come and they're talking, you liken it back. You're like, well, you remember that rope, that lifeline? Like who else is on your lifeline?
Yeah.
Like when you cut that, what's going to happen? You're going to fall.
Yeah.
So why would you cut your lifeline now? Bring people in. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I love about Addict Athlete is the metaphors that if you want to be a world-class athlete are the same principles to be a world-class individual in recovery.
Absolutely.
They're the same principles.
Yeah. That's
why when we're out running when I started in 2011 and I'm running with my clients, they're starting to process therapy issues while we're out on the streets. And I'm like, why are you guys saying this out here? It's EMDR therapy. It's
absolutely.
Left, right brain movement. And it's such a natural thing. That's why I love what movement does. I love the fact that you've overcome anxiety and fear and then become an instructor to have other people do that. Like there's so many cool things with that, man.
It's
like
just,
so you went through the Phoenix and you've been an instructor and you've been able to see the magnitude of what giving back looks like. That's step 12, right? The carrying the message, right?
Yep.
I love that. When did you come back to Utah?
Just moved back in like August.
So you're like brand new back. Welcome
brand
home.
new back. Yeah. I mean, it's exciting to be back. Stacy got a job here in Saratoga Springs. So it's like, great.
That's
good to be back.
incredible.
And truthfully, one of the big proponents of, hey, we actually had a 2-year stint in Colorado in between there.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the big, proponents was, hey, I get to be a part of Addict II Athlete, this amazing organization.
Used to. I'm recruiting you whether you like it or not.
I'm here.
I'm just thinking,
I'm raising my hand.
I'm thinking that, and I'm like, holy cow, I cannot believe this, because I remember the conversation, and the only reason I remember the conversation was because it came from Dr. Paul, and he's a mentor of mine.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Great. So he was my neighbor. I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, well beyond my adulthood, convert.
Yeah.
And he was a bishop and called me to be his counselor. I had no idea what that even was. Yeah. Right. When he got released, I became the bishop, which is hilarious because here's, prove the Lord has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that has a history of substance abuse and all kinds of other crazy stuff. And I'm thinking, God trusts me enough to do this.
Yeah.
But I always felt like, well, Dr. Paul is such an amazing man. He trained me well. A lot of the foundational things you'll hear on Addict II Athlete come from him, things I've been mentored with. But the craziest part about this whole journey and getting to that point where you've done all this was I remember that phone call because I wasn't going to even talk to you because March 4th is my anniversary, my wife. And we did that on a very unique day. And, that March 4th is the only day of the year that's a command. March 4th.
Huh.
You didn't know that, did you?
I'd never heard that.
That's
I love
a powerful date.
I love that.
So look what you did on March 4th. You said, I'm going forward. And so, funny enough, when I was a kid, probably faking sick at home, watching the Today Show, Al Roker's like, it's March 4th, the only day of the year it's a command. I thought, that's kind of cool. And so I've always had that in my head. That's when we chose to get married. Yeah. So that came during my anniversary. But the only reason I took that was because of Dr. Paul and how much love and respect. So to know that just a small little pivot moment for you was having your parents say, what can we do? That's incredible. It's kind of like when you are alone, when you're out there running, when you're just kind of in your head, maybe, running naked, right? No earbuds and no watch or anything. Do you understand? I'll get emotional. Do you understand why God hit you twice in the lake and had you hit by a car? There's a reason for those things. Like that was, it's kind of crazy to even say, but I don't want to step out of line with you, but that had to happen. Yeah. Because you needed to be here. Yeah. Wherever you were going, whatever you thought was going to happen, you wouldn't have been or made the impact that you have and that you're going to. How crazy to look back and be like, those were necessary steps for me to be here today and to accept that for what it is and not be angry. And more like, oh, you had a plan the whole time? Yeah. Tell me your thoughts on that. Because I am blown. I was not expecting this story. Yeah. And I don't know how many times you've shared this. I hope there's a book in the making because, geez, man.
It's, there's a book rattling around in that traumatized brain, but it's.
How do we get it out, right?
Got to get it out. Yeah. No, actually, I think Marissa was going to talk about, running marathons and world majors and that's great. And I've done that. That's not.
We haven't touched base on that, but that's so cool. But
no, to answer your question about, how do I feel about it? I was angry. I told you earlier, but I was angry. I was cursing God. Yeah. Literally cursing God. And now I can't imagine my life turning out any different. I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying I would wish it on anybody.
Absolutely.
But, I am so grateful because of the opportunities and the lessons I've learned. Yeah. Right. I get to sit and have this conversation, right? About, hey, how do we help people? How do we take this horrible disease and bring people together and help people know that they're loved, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I would have never reached the depths of love that I have for myself and for the random person that I see if I hadn't gone through those experiences.
Yeah,
So
man.
I mean, I'm gratitude is really the only word that I can think of.
I look at I look at the accountability, the humility, the humbleness, the meekness, all these things that you've had to do to repair the collateral damage from the addiction world. And like, to me, I'm thinking, why do your knees so many times, right? Like, because you needed that for even what's coming next. I mean, to me, that's incredible that you've had that kind of outlook, and you should try and bottle it and sell it, because not a lot of people have that principle of, I'm going to leave nothing on the table. I'm taking advantage of every step. I wish I had some of that, because I'm the first one to be like, how do I get out of this? Like, I love that mindset, man. And the fact that you've done it when your parents said, and Cirque Lodge is not cheap. They're like, we can do this once. And you're like, so be it.
Yeah.
And it's happening.
This is it.
I think it's incredible. Your relationship with your wife, like, I'm choosing you, you're choosing me. This is it. I love that mindset, man. And that's not something that I think you could have really created, established, and maintained if you hadn't have had the experiences that you've had. Like, literally, you've had to give up absolutely everything. And I think it's safe. I think God is a safe person to be really mad at, because he doesn't care. He loves you anyway.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Like, good grief, brother. I was not expecting your story. I really wasn't. And I'm blown away by the man that you are, and your willingness to want to give it and to help someone else that doesn't know it's available. Why do you feel the passion and the desire to want to, like, share it with the next person who's afraid of heights and doesn't dare lean into it?
Well, I think part of it comes back to, I know not everybody's going to have the opportunity I had, like you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cirque is top of the line, and not everybody's going to get that. And that's something that I struggle. Like, how do I handle that when I know if more people got that, more people would be sober? And that's my belief, right? I mean, if we could get people into great treatment facilities, we'd have less people active in addiction. So I think there's part of me that says, this is my little way of saying thank you to the people that have enabled my recovery. And then also, I freaking love recovery. Like, I do. Like, I do. I love, waking up Saturday morning early to go and just have a great long run, or getting to go and be with my friends and know that I don't have to hide anything, that I can just be there, be present, and, feel the feelings, right? Everything is so full. I lived my life numb for so long.
Oh, man, yeah.
And life is so good. It's hard. I mean, I think anybody who's been through the last 4 or 5 years in this country, in this world, let's just go, right? Whatever it is you're dealing with, I mean, it's hard.
Absolutely.
And I get the desire to not feel, but I just think of those moments, whether it's, a niece or nephew being born. I have a dog. I see my dog wake up with a toy in her mouth every morning. I mean, just little things, right? And it's like
the simple things.
Like, having lost that, having lived in darkness for so long, and knowing there are so many people who are living in darkness, and that maybe I can help show, hey, you don't have to do that.
Yep.
And if I can be a bright spot for 20 minutes, because we can just sit and have a conversation about rock climbing, right? I can show you how to tie some knots, take your head out of whatever you're dealing with.
I love it.
Because I still have that. And that's, I mean, again, recovery is selfish. I feel so much better when I'm able to give back.
Incredible.
Right? I mean, my wife is going to kill me. She's like, you're sitting on the Addict II Athlete podcast. You've been once since we moved back. She's like, go more. And it truly is. It's like, okay, I am better when I come here. Yeah. When I get to sit and be a part of this.
They need
and
you.
It's selfish.
Lots of people that need you. Yeah.
It's selfish,
I agree.
but I love it. Right. And, as much as it helps other people, it helps me. And then it just keeps going. And then it just keeps going.
Yep.
And so, we
didn't get into half the stuff. So you are going to be a recurring guest on here, man. Absolutely. But brother, I think this is awesome. And I'm just blown away by your willingness to share so openly and to be willing to not just inspire, but to be taught too, because you're right. A lot of people can teach us so many things that we don't know yet. So you're in the crosshairs now, brother. I love this. It's so awesome.
Thank you.
Listeners, you've been well fed. Check out the Addict II Athlete podcast on all major platforms. We'd love to have your feedback. So jump on, leave us a review. Jump on that website. Keep us posted. Look at all of our upcoming events. And look for part 2 of this coming down the pipeline here soon, hopefully. Yeah? I think we'll get him back in the studio here. Nonetheless, let us know what we can do to help make your recovery process a little bit easier. You got a team behind you to help you do your best to turn your mess into your message.